Our synod knows disasters, and we are called to respond. And when we do, we become a Lutheran disaster response. Lutheran disaster response provides assistance to bring God's comfort, healing, and renewal to those affected by disasters. It does this work with and through synods and congregations, along with affiliated social ministry organizations. The Southeastern Synod works hand in hand with Lutheran disaster response to become an expression of LDR in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and Tennessee. The Synod Disaster Ministry Committee, along with Pastor Morgan Gordy, assistant to the bishop, provide leadership for this ministry. Working with congregations and local faith-based partners after a disaster, the Synod Disaster Team forms a disaster response plan. LDR, at the church-wide level, partners with synods, congregations, and social ministry organizations to help with consultation and funding to make these plans happen. We all work together. An example of this work can be seen in the response to the 2020 March and April tornadoes that occurred in Middle and Southeastern Tennessee. With a partnership grant from LDR, along with other donations, Southeastern Synod LDR is working to provide volunteer housing and assistance with unmet needs, emotional spiritual care, support groups, summer camps for children, and retreats for disaster caregivers. We will also provide funding for caseworkers to assist those in need of advocacy in getting resettled after these deadly storms. Other ways Southeastern Synod LDR executes its mission include construction and case management, forming mission teams for muck and guts, rebuilds, and working with local long-term recovery organizations. As congregations in the Southeastern Synod of the ELCA, we each play an important role in disaster response and preparedness. What does this mean? Does your congregation have a disaster response coordinator? Do you have a safety team? Do you have a disaster response plan? If you answered yes to these questions, congratulations! Your congregation is well on the way to using your hands to do God's work. If you answered no, you're probably wondering how to get started. Fear not, brothers and sisters, we're here to help. The path to making sure your congregation is prepared for a disaster and has a plan to respond begins with appointing a disaster response coordinator, who can in turn assemble a safety team or work directly with your church council. With these servants in place, the next step is to go on the Southeastern Synod's website and complete your disaster response plan. This step-by-step plan will walk your congregation through the steps necessary to be prepared for disasters, both natural and otherwise. An important section of the disaster response plan is asset mapping. In this section, you'll identify the human and tangible assets in your congregation. Do you have first responders among you? Construction experts? Is your church able to serve as an emergency shelter? Can your property accommodate RVs for responders to set up temporary headquarters? These are just a few of the items in the asset mapping section. Think of the ways your congregation can be of service internally, in your community, and throughout the greater church if you're prepared. Once your disaster response plan is in place, you'll be ready to engage in ongoing preparedness activities to further your congregation's ability to respond to disasters. These ongoing activities include regularly updating your disaster response plan, signing your congregants up for muck and gut training, emotional spiritual care training, developing mission teams to help with rebuilds and cleanup, training on how to staff a crisis cleanup hotline, and how your congregation can be a hospitality site for hosting volunteers. This is just a sampling of some of the things you can do to prepare your congregation to serve in times of disaster. Okay, so you're ready to get started. How do you do that? It's easy. Reach out to the disaster response coordinator serving your region. Not sure who that is? Contact Pastor Morgan Gordy to find out. You can reach her through the Synod office, and her number and email are also on the Synod webpage. As we're told in the Gospel of Peter, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Let us all go and serve.